afternoon, everyone. So about a year ago, we decided to release to all the employees in our group a generative AI tool, a personal assistant. That personal assistant has a number of capabilities, and it is designed to let people figure out by themselves what works and what doesn't. So that's about August, July last year, so about a year ago. This is pre-ChatGPT. And it turns out that many other organizations have made a completely different decision. So they banned these tools in the workplace for sometimes good reasons. We thought that with the right safety and privacy provisions, we could give people the opportunity of experimenting at scale. So it turns out that that has become an important tool for us for Gen AI discovery at scale, for experimentation, bottom-up experimentation. I lead artificial intelligence for a group which is called Prozos. We serve about 1/4 of the global population with one of our brands across the globe. We are present in about 100 countries in areas like classifieds, where people buy and sell things, or real estate, or fintech, if you make a transaction, financial transaction, and merchant transaction in Asia, probably touch our systems. In food delivery, we have very large food delivery organizations in various parts of the world. And if you take online courses, chances are that you use some of our services. So we are a consumer internet company. We're based in Amsterdam. That makes us the largest consumer internet company in Europe. But because of the nature of our business, which is managing millions of transactions every day, we have to manage lots of data. So we use machine learning and data science in general for many years already. So we have hundreds of models that support our businesses. So we are at the point in which, at the scale where we operate, you can't operate at that scale without machine learning and data science. But there were always been a number of use cases for which we didn't really have a good solution. And those use cases have to do with language. So many needs, but no good technology, until 2018, 2019, when transformers became available and the first models became useful. Say, think about BERT, but also at that time it was GPT-2. It was very early on to bring any of that in production at scale, but it was interesting. So what we decided is to find out if that was just a normal marginal improvement in current technologies, or if that was a major thing we had to pay attention. This is our journey. So we started 2019 asking that question and testing extensively. And we turned out, we actually concluded, yes, we have to pay a lot of attention. We have to invest in this. It's far from ready, but it's promising. It's different from anything else that we have seen before. So we started a program of testing at scale with all the companies of our group. That lasted about 2 years. And we tested many, many use cases. For instance, we tested the possibility of creating automatic creation of Q&A for education material. You have a course, and at the end of this course, or in between this course, you want to ask your learners questions, right? The creation of that Q&A takes a lot of time. And in particular, it's always the same for everybody. It's not personalized. Can we use these tools to make that process better, faster, right? Cheaper, and so on? We did the same for code. At that time, we were looking at ways to automate code production. We are a technology company, so a large number of our employees are developers, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. And we discovered 3 things in that process. The first one is that the vast majority of the companies that were testing this across the globe in our group were testing the same thing. So we had to do something to make that more efficient. The second one is that they were using in different ways that we intend them then to do. They were actually picking out the way to use it, the way they like it. And many use these tools as a personal assistant to make that life better, to make their job better. And the third one is that as much we had ideas about where this could work, they, the tester, had better ideas. A lot of this came from the bottom, right? So we said, great, let's make sure we can facilitate this as much as possible. That's where we released the tool. That's basically last summer. It's called +1.io. It's released across our group. It's a chatbot on Slack, because our engineering teams, most of our companies use Slack, But it is designed for experimentation, so it doesn't use one model, ChatGPT. It uses about 20 models. Right? You can do language, all the process of language. You can do images. You can look at voice. You can interrogate your own databases. You can code, and so on, and so on, and so on. It is designed to give you the biggest possible opportunities, such a way that you can figure out by yourself what works and what doesn't. So in a way, we wanted to make Gen AI uncool again, right? Do it and figure out what works, right? Now, to do that, you also need to put a lot of guardrails around this, right? And some of these guardrails are technical. For instance, you cannot use any of the interaction to train any model, right? So whatever you do, that is not used by any model and will never surface anywhere else. So you need to fix that technically, but also contractually. We use other provisions in terms of privacy and so on. And we also need to educate all our users continuously. This is how they use it. So hundreds of thousands of interactions. I don't even know how many, but we have about, at this point in time, some 8,000 people working it. It's going to be 10,000 soon. So there's a lot of people that use it every day. So this is the overall statistics about these interactions. We captured that by tagging the interactions as they happen, right? We don't see what's in there, but we can tag what they are there for statistics. And then we interview people all the time, right? So we know both the statistics and the content. And you can see that about 50% are engineering tasks. Coding, figuring out how the system works, create SQL code, and so on, and so on, and so on. And the other 50% is spread around a number of things. The fact that this 50% is coding, it has to do with two things. We are a tech company, therefore you expect that a lot of people use tech. Tech for us is just coding, essentially, development company. But in fact, it is more broader than that. We think, after having deployed in various companies that have different proportion of engineers and non-engineers, that this is where these tools work best. This is really useful for engineering tasks. The other 50% is different. So what do the people do? For instance, in coding, I need to read because I don't remember that, but in any case, given a code snippet that produces an error, you get the code, it gives you an error, right? Correct and explain the error, and that's fine. Every language model can do that, but do it in the style of your organization because you have your own policies, how you do it, how you document things, right? It is personalized. One of the things that we find out all the time is that a lot of the underlying tools, right, that support these chatbots, they can give you very average answers which are not very useful. So they become useful when they are contextualized. The context, you only know that, so you have to figure out ways to actually prepend the context to these tools. Another usage, for instance, I find it interesting, is a product manager. He works in a department where they ship goods, second-hand goods, to the buyers. He needs to estimate a product weight and dimension of a good from an image, right? Many other tools that are out there, but if there are simpler ways to do this, they are welcome. There are some colleagues that work, some managers, they want to improve or rewrite the feedback for colleagues. You have a period during the year when you have, let's say, interviews with your colleagues, and you know what to say, but you want to say it better. You want to nuance it, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then many, many others, but these are very tangible, practical things. They help you solve a technical problem, or in any case, something that has to do with your job, or improve the way that you work. And sometimes we find surprises. I need to share this one. So this is an intern, a very young intern, that works in one of our companies, and he was really unhappy with the tool, right? So we interviewed, and we tried to figure out. And this is one of the things where he failed. He wanted the tool to produce an image of a meal by a poor student with low cooking skills trying to impress a date. That was his intended use of the tool. So take it in perspective. So you ask a machine to visualize the fact that you don't have ingredients and you don't know how to cook, right? And you expect that is going to land you a date, right? Obviously, he was not satisfied, right? He was not happy. I don't think nothing good happened from this one. But the reason why I like it is because it has implicitly the importance of prompting. So there are a number of assumptions you make about these tools which are totally unfounded. So you need to know how they work. This machine is going to create you an image of a scrambled egg, right? What else can it do? It's not going to land your date. It's not going to solve your problem. You have to know how it works. You need to know what you mean. You need to know what you want to get if you want these machines to work. If you drill down to where we have the biggest percentage of usage, we see that software engineering tasks, but also writing and communication, are the most common. Here there are a couple of things that we did not expect, and some that are obvious. So engineers obviously spend most of their time in software engineering tasks, of course. What else do you expect? But we also have the rest of the organization that spends a significant amount of time in very technical tasks. And this is everybody else. So that means sales, it can be customer support, it can be finance, and so on. Inside there, you find things that have to do, how do I get the system to do things for me? But we find interesting, there's also a group of people, significant large group of people, that try to write queries to interrogate data without intermediation. I want to find out the sales of this product in the last month under this and that conditions and so on. And I don't want to go through a dashboard because it might not give me what I want. So they want to be able to use language to find out what's in numbers. So we call that a sort of the starting point of the movement of liberation from dashboards, right? Because then you have the opportunity of figuring out what's in the data by yourself. The other thing that we found interesting, and actually larger in terms of percentage from what we expected, it is this need for writing and communication. This is what I said before. Everybody has an idea of what to do. They need help how to do it well. And we found that for non-engineers and engineers. So what is it? It can simply be, listen, I have to give feedback to someone. These are the things. How do I do it in a gentle, positive way, right? Or I want to start this document. How do I actually put this draft in place because I don't know how to do it? So that's very, very common and for everybody. One thing that we really spent a lot of time on is feedback. So everybody can give feedback to interactions. Feedback is obvious, thumbs up, thumbs down. If you're super happy, you do heart. And then you have Pinocchio. Pinocchio is where you see that the results of the model are bad, but it's bad in a sort of twisted way. You know, you lied to me. You made things up, right? You hallucinate. And these are the type of behaviors that you really want to eliminate because they remove trust, right? So how do we deal with that? When we started, after we had sufficient volume to create reasonable statistics, and we're talking about October of last year, the percentage of Pinocchios was close to 10%. So it means 1 in 10 interactions, you can trust it. You cannot trust it. It's bad, right? That's way too high. It means that you cannot take for granted anything that will say. You have to validate everything. You have to pay attention. Now, you fast forward, and in June, so a few months back, it's down to 2.9%, is lower still now, right? So what happened in between? A few things. The first one, models got better, right? They simply hallucinate less, right? That's one thing. The second, we got better in the sense that when you prompt, a lot of the work that happens under the scenes is meta-prompting. Everything else that goes together with the prompt. Now that has grown a lot, right? Has grown a lot because it includes all the things that help you corner the model in places where we believe has less hallucinations. So that means prompting better, but also means intercepting your prompt with other models that give you the chance if this is going to hallucinate or not, right? So a lot of these things take it down to 2.9. Where it will go, we don't know. I don't believe that the models themselves will get to 0, so they will say a certain amount, underline, let's say, noise if you want, but you can reduce it to the point where you don't have really to worry about that, right? Whether we are close to that one or not, I think we are getting in that direction. The other thing that we really had to look carefully is costs. So anytime you touch one of these models, and the more complex and sophisticated the interactions are, that means that they look at multiple models at the same time, costs can go up, right? We started in October 2022, and let's say the baseline at that point of cost was 100. If we look at June, the same timeline we had before, is 45. Number of things happened there, but the most important one is, of course, that we remove traffic for the traditional commercial models to open source models that we fine-tune in-house. I mean, that process of fine-tuning, it's still hard, it's still expensive, but if you have millions of possible interactions with these models, you can isolate which type of interactions are going to be so frequent that it actually makes sense. We believe this is going to be the situation, let's say the standard situation in the next, let's say, near future anyway. You don't use one model, you use many models, and there's going to be a portfolio of, let's say, OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere, whatever, all the other big brands out there, and a certain number of these open source, the Llama, the MPT, and so on, that you train in-house for specific use cases that are narrow. So this is going to go down still. Where is the value for the users? If you ask them, for individual users, three main things. They can work faster, right? It means they can do the same thing, they take less time. They do more, and that's visible everywhere. It's obvious in technology tasks. For instance, you know how to code in a certain language, but not in another language. They actually do it. They extend beyond what they do. So it's like having a colleague that knows one thing, and now he knows 1.5 things, right? It makes a difference. And the third one is because sometimes they're just stuck. They need something to start. They need inspiration. Find an outline, determine how I should write this thing, an agenda for a meeting, and so on. Just get going, right? Altogether, it implies gaining independence. And that's a common trait for all of them. They said, if I see one thing overall, I'm more independent. Which, by the way, we call the tool +1 because it's like having an extra team member in your group, right? Somebody that you can sort of tap on the shoulder without tapping on the shoulder, right? So, because you have more independence for that. For the business itself, well, the upside is two sides, the productivity one and the use case discovery. Use case discovery is what we really care at the end. Productivity is something that we all assume is going to happen there. So self-reported productivity is what we do. It's about 72% of people that we ask after using this for a certain amount of time in a specific test situation, how do you perceive the productivity to be? 72% they say it's higher, a certain percentage say it's lower, and about 20% say it's neutral, didn't change. So self-reported, 72%, they say higher productivity. In some cases, you can measure it better, and that's really hard to do, and it costs time, right, and money, but you can identify, in particular in software engineering, cases where you ask people to work with the tool and without the tool, and then you measure the effect, right? So in many of these cases, we see increase in productivity, which are about 50%. Obviously, I don't think they can be replicated everywhere, but they are material. If you consider the cost of these tools, no matter what, productivity is going to be 10 times or 100 times. The return of investment, it is going to be extremely high because the tools, compared to what you save, are inexpensive, right? So we should keep that in mind. But the other thing, which is the reason why we started in the first place, is that the tool has been used to make sure that there is a process of find out a possible use case for your organization, pin it, make sure that you actually find out where it works, where it doesn't, and then scale it, right? So this is the process that we really focus on now, and it has been, let's say, developed to the point of releasing application, I think about 12 times now. And here I can show 4, which are public. So Brainly as a student assistant that does exactly this, Good Habits as a tutor, iFood in Brazil as a food ordering based, a conversation food ordering, and Stack Overflow as many tools for assisting coders. So all of these tools have gone through the same process. So the initial idea was through experimentation, bottom-up experimentation. And when you found something that works, it has been developed to the point at which you test the boundaries, and then it goes into standard, let's say, engineering process, take out. They're still new, because all this, in any case, is new. But for those that have, let's say, several months of history, 4 or 5 months of history, you can see the KPIs going up, and you can see also the financial KPIs going up. I don't think any of the results have been released so far. It's probably too early. But you can see that it has an impact not only for individuals, it has impact for the companies that do this. What are we going to do next? A few things. First of all, we made a bet, and the bet was it is useful to give to everybody a tool for experimenting at scale, and we think that that bet worked, right? So I think it's a pattern that we definitely continue to expand. And of course, whatever new models, new technology comes out is going to be made available there. The next part that we really need to accelerate now is this process of find it, pin it, scale it. So we need that process to shorten down from the moment you have an idea to the moment you're ready to test with your customers as short as possible. That requires, for instance, releasing APIs. It requires releasing tools for automating prompting, releasing tools that have to do perhaps with training your own models in-house and making that super simple. But we believe that that's going to be necessary to make that faster. I leave you with one final thought, because it's the reason why we believe this is going to be impactful. From all the interviews with all the power users, by the way, power users are those that use the tool every day, multiple times per day, for weeks in a row. The common comment across all of them is that we believe we are using only 20% of what's possible. Even the power users, even those that have the most common utilization, they are not really sure what else is behind there. Because every time they test something, they try something that didn't believe could work, it seems to work. It comes out, there is something there. So there is still an 80% for which we don't really have awareness, right? And that's where we really believe we have to go and find out what it is. Thanks for your attention.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Euro. And yes, the Slido is working. I'm going to start with a quick one, though. Are you an academic who works with sort of big business environments, or the other way around?
I'm always confused. I spend most of my career between business and academia, so I hope I like to think of myself as somebody that knows how to do business, but there are a very strong connection with academia, know how research works.
It's a real challenge, I think, bridging the gap between academia and business, so I thought I'd ask. All right, thank you for your questions on Slido. I've got one from Ryan. Ryan, it says, Euro, how do you educate your users to utilize your Gen AI to use the tool in an optical and ethical way?
So, well, first of all, we have to educate, so you should not give for granted that, so when we start, when they get access, there are a number of things that are in the tool itself, which are, let's say, click this button, you're going to get this one. So it's sort of learning by doing. We do workshops all the time, and we do, let's say, these interviews with individuals, with the teams, to surface what works, what doesn't, and in particular figure out how to make sure that they understand, let's say, a key thing, which is all these models and all these tools can do a lot of things, but a lot of those are not very useful. You need to quarter them to make sure that you get what you want. If you decontextualize a question, if you say, as I said before, if you ask a question which is generic, you're going to get a generic answer. It's just useless. You don't do anything with that, right? So you need to sharpen the question, but you also need to prompt in such an effective, careful way, and you need to know how to do that, and then you get what you want. It's not natural, right? You have to learn how to do it.
Interestingly, it's very similar for stand-up comedy. The more specific you are with the punchline, the funnier it is. So you could say, anyway, that's a random extra thing that we're going to talk about. Is there a worry that averaging the results of something just means that we sort of end up on this bland kind of center line? How do you handle all of your data so that you don't have algorithmic bias, for example, or just this kind of tend towards nothingness?
Well, there are a few things. First of all, when you're talking about bias, you probably refer to the fact if the model goes into, let's say, patterns that you believe that they're not appropriate. But in any case, that happens if you actually rely completely on internet data. But if you think of these models in this way, on the one hand, they are storage of knowledge, right? On the other hand, they are embryonic, simple reasoning engines, right? So the storage of knowledge is more problematic than the reasoning engine. If you actually ask them to actually pick information from your knowledge base, they are forced, they are constrained, so the chance that they hallucinate or do something biased is less in general terms. Now, you have to make sure that your knowledge bases have those characteristics, but then you have control, right? At least you have control. So I think that is very important. And that's probably one of the, let's say, the most important, let's say, simple measures that you have to make that happen.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to do one more quick question. What size company is minimum to create its own tool with an open model? This is another question from Slido.
Say again, sorry.
What size of company is minimum to create its own tool with an open model? I mean, you just need to be a person and try it and get it wrong a few times, and don't tell anyone until you get it right, I guess. One. Yeah. Give it a go.
That's the minimum tool. I mean, it's something that was extremely hard. I mean, just to put this in perspective. If you want to do something that works, a large scale, you want to train 100 billion parameter model, you want to use it, let's say, for millions of Q&A, it's as hard as always been, so this is not something that every company can do. But if you want to experiment, if you want to find out where these things are useful or not for your organization, any organization can do it, and that's already a big step.
And I'm presuming you're going to stick around so people can ask you.
Of course.
Excellent. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Euro, once again. And everybody, Euro, Beinat.
Thank you.
Yeah.